Welcome to Theezy Under Grace, bringing faith, hope, and the love of Christ to everyone. I'm your host, Teresa O'Neill, otherwise known as Theezy. Well, I hope everyone is certainly having a wonderful week so far. I also hope you and your families are staying safe and that you are practicing social distancing. If you're not, I really urge you to. I know you're probably going stir crazy and cabin fever crazy. You probably have cabin fever, should I say, just like me, but hey, I'd rather be safe than sorry, and I hope you guys are definitely taking this time out just to do some self-introspection, to spend some time with your family, and to maybe do some of those things you've been wanting to do. Well, I definitely hope one thing that's for sure is that you've been able to listen to the latest podcast episode, which I released about a week and a half ago, which is simply called Just Checking In. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it before this particular episode, basically head to any of the available streaming platforms to check it out. Don't forget to subscribe and also share as well. So if this is your first time listening to the Theezy Under Grace podcast, welcome. Please take a moment to also listen to the previous 11 episodes just to learn a little more about me and this podcast, and to also check out some other helpful topics you may find beneficial, such as church hurt, for your good, perseverance, attitude adjustment, and worthiness, just to name a few. You know, guys, I say this every podcast episode because I am still in awe and I'm still very, very grateful to have the podcast on this many platforms. The Theezy Under Grace podcast is available on 13 platforms. Yes, 13 platforms. The Theezy Under Grace podcast is available on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. It's available on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Stitcher, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Overcast, and YouTube. Yes, just head to YouTube, search for Theezy Under Grace Podcast. You'll see the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe and also share. Also, you can just download any of these other apps and also head to their respective websites, listen, subscribe, and again, don't forget to share. Please make sure you follow the Theezy Under Grace podcast Instagram page, which the handle is at Theezy Under Grace altogether, just to stay current with the podcast updates and alerts. Also, you can connect with me on any of my other social media accounts. Just head to my website, which is theezysvoyage.com. That's TheeZys, V as a Victor, OYAGE.com, and you'll find all of the links there. So, guys, this week's episode is titled Following Instructions. Why is it so hard to do at times? They are words to guide you, to lead you, to help keep order, or it helps to keep us all from straying from a particular path. It also helps us to maintain focus. But again, why is it so hard to follow instructions at times? Is it because we fail to strengthen ourselves spiritually? Is it pride? Is it because we don't really want to do it to begin with? Is it because we think we know a better and easier way? Or is it fear from stepping outside of what you're used to, which is your comfort zone? Or is it because we feel the way that we're doing it is the only way and that there is no other way? Instructions, if thorough and precise, they pretty much can give you a play-by-play of what is to happen next and even the end result. So again, I'm going to ask, why are they so hard to follow at times though? Let's jump right into this episode. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. For one, it's free. Secondly, they have all the creation tools you need that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Also, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I can admit, I can be pretty stubborn at times, and I just want to do my own thing, and I end up paying for doing it my way in some type of fashion. Then comes the regret and dealing with the consequences of not following instructions. Now, this applies not only in everyday life, but also spiritually. At times, God is saying to do this and do it this way. And I'm like, well, I've always done it this way and I've seen it done this way. So this is the way I'm going to do it. That's right. I'm totally disobedient, thinking I know best, thinking my way is easier, and even basing what my experience will be off of what others' people experience was like. Well, let's look at it this way. God says to do it this way. It's also written in His Word. And because of my current circumstances, sometimes I really can't see how God's way is going to work. So I try to concoct a plan of my own because I feel God isn't the one feeling how I'm feeling at the time. And His way doesn't even seem so fair. How silly of me, right? But it's my reality, and it's the reality for many of you too. Why do we choose to ignore what God has instructed us to do? Is it because we feel we have a certain image and reputation to upkeep and maintain? Is it because we're scared of not really knowing the outcome and we're basically basing it off of our circumstances versus then really trusting God and that He would never lead us astray, knowing it would definitely be worthwhile if we did it His way? Why do we do this to ourselves? That is a good question or questions to ask. Let's take a look at the children of Israel, or the Israelites, in which I'll refer to them for a moment. Now, please note, the Israelites are not just any kind of people. They are God's chosen people, just like you and me. So let's jump into this story here. The Lord sent his servant Moses alongside his brother Aaron to rescue the Israelites from out of slavery in Egypt and to lead them to the promised land, which was just through the wilderness and across the Jordan River. Now, if you're not familiar with this particular rescue, the Lord instructs Moses and Aaron on how to lead the enslaved people out of Egypt. He tells him to go to Pharaoh and to ask him to let his people go, in which Pharaoh says no and refuses time after being asked a few times. Moses didn't understand why God would tell him to do this, knowing that Pharaoh is going to say no, and God even tells Moses that He will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he would refuse. Now, just think about that. If God is telling you to go and ask somebody something, so in this case, He's telling Moses, hey, go talk to Pharaoh, ask him to let, my enslaved people go. And knowing that He's going to harden Pharaoh's heart, how then do you think Moses felt? How then do you think he was able to keep going back to Pharaoh time after time, knowing after God told Moses that, hey, I'm going to harden his heart so he could keep refusing? Not knowing that it's all a part of a bigger plan. But how would you feel if you were Moses? You keep going back to this Pharaoh and saying, hey, this is the word of the Lord, or, here's even proof that this is coming from God and not me. But you already know He's going to say no, but God keeps sending you back anyway. How would you react to that? Let's think about that for a moment. How would you even react to that? So again, Moses didn't understand why God would tell him to do this, knowing that Pharaoh was going to say no. And again, God even tells Moses that He would harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will refuse. Now, that very same refusal drove Pharaoh to make the Israelites work even harder, even to the point that Moses went back to God and begged and pleaded. He asked God, why did you allow all of this trouble to be brought upon your very own people? And why did you keep sending me back to Pharaoh, knowing that he's going to become so brutal to these people, since I'm actually keep coming to ask him and knowing he's going to say no, but since you're making me the spokesperson, this is what Moses is saying to God. You made me the spokesperson, and He's going to say no. And then because of this, He's going to punish your enslaved people because of this, because I keep coming back to Him. He already knows that you're trying to talk to Him through me. But again, He's going to refuse. So Moses is coming to God begging and pleading like, hey, you see that the more I ask Him, the more He's going to make the Israelites work harder and harder. So much to the point that the Israelites are coming to Moses and they're saying, hey, dude, you talking to Pharaoh ain't working, because basically he's making us work harder and harder. Like, we are worked to the bone. Like, what are you doing? You're saying that God sent you. What are you even doing? Where is God? Why is He allowing this to happen? So then in turn, Moses is going back to God saying, hey, look, these people are on my tail. I don't even understand it myself. Something has to be up. But why did you even make me a spokesperson, knowing that this is going to be the end result of me asking Pharaoh? So again, just think about that. Think about that for a moment, because to Moses and to the enslaved people, it seems that as if God was not going to do anything to rescue them. It's like he was just being sent on a dummy mission, so to speak. So again, just think about that for a moment. Have you ever been in this place where Moses was in? Have you ever been in this place to where you're asking God, like, okay, God, you keep telling me to do this and do that. You're guiding me to do this and do that. But look at the outcome. Like, I feel like I keep getting rejected. I feel like things are getting worse and worse. Like, what are you doing here? Like, do you even listen? Do you see what's going on? Do you see what's happening? Are you hearing me? Are you there? So how many of us have been in this position before, just like Moses? I certainly have. And I've asked God, like, where are you? Knowing that he's there. But at the same time, I'm just like, okay, you telling me to do this, but look what's happening. Like, are you serious? Like, I don't even see how this is going to work. But again, this is the same way that Moses felt. And I'm pretty sure that some of you probably felt this same way too. I certainly have. So again, have you ever asked God, why did he tell you to do something, only for it to seem like it made things much worse? You may have asked him, how is this going to work? Because look at what has happened now. Like, do you see what has happened now? Where are you, God? So let's get back to the story. So despite of Moses feeling this way, he's going back and he's begging and pleading to God. Unbeknownst to him, it was all a part of a bigger plan that God had for leading the people out of Egypt. By Pharaoh's heart being hardened and refusing, when the upcoming plan is carried out through Moses, everyone will be able to see just how much of a waymaker and miracle worker God really is, and also see that he means when he says to really trust him and his plan. So let's fast forward a little. Pharaoh basically ends up chasing the Israelites, which were the enslaved people, out of the wilderness in Egypt. So out into the wilderness from Egypt. So only for them to arrive at the Red Sea, and they start panicking because they're just like, okay, Pharaoh is chasing us, him and his army. They got chariots. We have our wives, our kids. We have our families, what little belongings we have. We're all running for our lives, only to end up right here facing the Dead Sea. Where in the world are we going to go from here? We can't just swim across the sea. It's a sea. It's vast. So basically they're saying to themselves, they're panicking. They're saying, this is it. This is the only way out of Egypt. And how on earth are we going to get to the other side of this sea? There are no boats. There are no ferries or anything to carry these people and their children across. And they're certainly not going to swim in this vast ocean. So I'm going to ask again, how in the world are they going to get across that ocean to that wilderness to get to that promised land? So basically, Moses was thinking the same thing. Moses was certainly scared as well, because he even cried out to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving. Pick up your staff and raise your hand over the sea. Divide the water so the Israelites can walk through the middle of the sea on dry ground." Well, Moses did just that, and they all were able to walk on dry ground with walls of water on both sides of them. Can you imagine that? Walking through dry ground in the middle of the sea. Like, seriously, really just take that in. So they all made it to the other side of the sea, and with Pharaoh and his army not too far behind, the Lord then instructed Moses to raise his staff yet again for the sea to return to normal, which it did, and it swallowed up Pharaoh and his whole entire army in the process. So again, let's go back to the question again. Why is it so hard to follow instructions? The example of Moses feeling like we've all felt before when God instructs us to do something and it appears it doesn't make sense to do should help us to remember why we must trust him and his plan despite of how it looks. God not only showed Moses and the Israelites who he was, but he also showed Aaron and even Pharaoh and his army. Despite them being swallowed up in the Red Sea, he even proved to all of these people, everybody involved, who he was. Although it didn't make sense when God kept telling Moses and his brother Aaron to keep going to ask Pharaoh to let the Israelites go, and each time Pharaoh refused and punished them, it was all a part of God's plan. What if Moses and Aaron wouldn't have remained obedient and stuck to the Lord's instructions? They'd all probably would have been enslaved to Pharaoh until their death. So take some time to think. When you feel like you want to deviate from what the Lord has told you to do, think of this very example of how it looked. but how in the end God came through and carried out what he said and he was going to do, despite of how it looked or how it was going to go. Basically, we all should just follow instructions. Now, let's transition a little bit here. I do have another example, and it's kind of relating to the same situation we just reviewed. But in this example, I'm just going to go a little more in detail about how not following instructions can lead you to never even seeing the end result or being delayed for months or even years, in this case, to the end result. So let's go back to the Israelites. So again, remember, the Israelites are God's chosen people. They've been rescued from the hands of Pharaoh and from their enslaved lives. So now they're living in freedom now, and they're on their way to this land of promise. However, this newfound freedom isn't without its challenges. On the way to this land of promise, or the promised land, in which you may have heard it referred to several times, they're navigating through the wilderness with the instruction and guidance of the Lord through Moses and Aaron. Along the way, God provides them with everything they need: food, water, everything they need to survive and to actually navigate to reach the promised land. But guess what? These very people who just witnessed how mighty and faithful and wondrous God is, they start to complain. They hate the instructions they're getting from Moses and Aaron from the Lord. They even start to complain, saying they want their old life back in Egypt. It was just easier for us to live in Egypt. We didn't have to deal with this. We didn't have to do that. It doesn't look promising. It's like we're just out here wandering for nothing. Like, they complained and they complained. So you have a newfound freedom. Let's stop for a moment here. The Israelites have a newfound freedom. They're no longer enslaved. They're free from Pharaoh's rule. They don't have to work so hard anymore. They are, basically, they should be basking in their newfound freedom from that old life. But again, these simple instructions and what the Lord is telling them, and if you read through if you go to the book of Exodus and read this, a lot of this stuff, it's not even that hard to comply with. But again, because of how it's looking, these people are complaining. And again, they're even saying they want their old life in Egypt. They want to be slaves again. They said it was easier to be a slave. So can you imagine that? So again, let's pause for a minute. How many of us have ever done this? I know I have. I've said, man, this is for the birds. I'm going back to what I know. Has anyone else ever felt that way? That's okay. You don't have to admit it to me, but I know deep down inside somebody out there has experienced this same type of situation as well, where you throw your hands up and said, nah, Lord, I know you told me to do this, but this is for the birds. I'm going back to what I know, going back to my comfort zone. Nah, I'm good. So let's get back to the story here. So as the Israelites are navigating through the wilderness and complaining along the way, they start to despise what Moses and Aaron, along with the other anointed leaders, are guiding and instructing them to do according to the Lord. Even the 10 commandments that God gave Moses. Some cursed God. Some even banded together to start worshiping other gods and idols. Some started to do their own thing. And you have some that did remain faithful to what the Lord said. So let's not discredit those people. Throughout this journey, you have had some that lost their lives due to disobedience, and those that had to deal with the consequences of being disobedient. At the end of it all, it took 40 years to reach the promised land. And guess what? According to the calculations of distance from where they initially started, so when they crossed through that Red Sea, from the time they crossed the Red Sea to going through the wilderness, crossing the Jordan River, basically, if you do the calculations of the distance from that starting point to the end point, which is crossing the Jordan River to the promised land, basically what should have taken them in total, it should have taken them about 2.5 weeks to reach the promised land, not 40 years. Yep, you heard that right. What would have taken 2.5 weeks to reach took 40 years. Can you imagine knowing what should have taken a couple of weeks taking 40 years? 40 years is a long time. From weeks to years, all because they did not follow instructions. And guess what? Even Moses had to pay for his instance of disobedience too. The Lord told him he would never reach the promised land and he'll die before that happens, in which he did. Unfortunately, Moses did die before reaching the promised land. He was able to go up on the mountain and see the promised land, but he was never able to reach the promised land to experience it. So with that, Joshua came into the picture and he led the descendants of the Israelites to the promised land. So I'm going to ask this again. Do you ever want to be like the Israelites, just wandering and wandering in circles and around for years, when you could have already experienced what God has had for you? Again, remember, from the time they left on the other side of that Red Sea, going through the wilderness to reach the promised land, it should have took them 2.5 weeks, but in fact, it took them 40 years. Like, really, let that sink in. 2.5 weeks versus 40 years. Can you imagine? I mean, just going around in circles and circles, you're wandering. I mean, seriously, just wandering through the wilderness. It should have took you 2.5 weeks to get there. But instead, because of your murmuring, your complaining, your disobedience, you didn't want to follow instructions, it took you 40 years to get there. And some people never even saw it because they died before they even got to the promised land. So again, I'm going to ask you this. Do you ever want to be like the Israelites, just wandering and wandering around and around for years when you could have already experienced what God has for you? And I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure we all can think of something like an achievement or something we could have experienced sooner, but instead it took us way longer to accomplish it because we intervened in God's plan with our own plan. Remember that feeling? Do you want to keep having this feeling? For one, I certainly do not. But seriously, just think about this. All in all, my friends, it isn't easy following instructions at times, especially spiritually. We're surrounded by all types of distractions, feeling we have to portray and maintain a certain image or lifestyle to others, and we're often in our own way, blocking our own manifestation and blessings. Would we be much further than we want to be in Christ and in life if we had stayed the course? What really caused us to veer off? Did we take our eyes off of God? Did we become so engulfed in what our circumstances were instead of viewing them as temporary lessons of growth, preparing us for what's to come if we had stayed on track? What or why did we stray, or why are we straying even now? Is it our comfort levels? Is it because we feel we cannot do it and that we're not worthy of the outcome? Seriously, think about it. What is it that is causing you to not follow instructions? The Bible is our guide alongside the Holy Spirit, which is our comforter and helper, to guide us as we navigate through all of and any seasons of our life, which are these seasons of wilderness. God even provides messengers to help bring these instructions into manifestation in our lives through some form of ministers, pastors, and other anointed leaders. And even it could be a friend, it could be your prayer partner, it could be just someone you know, or maybe someone you don't know. Could this also be another reason why we choose not to follow instructions? Is it all because of who is delivering the message of instructions? What if it doesn't come from who you think it should? Could this also be a reason you choose to deviate away from what God has instructed? Now, let me put a disclaimer out here because I can already hear the echoes of people saying, hey, I don't trust preachers or pastors. How do I know what they're saying is from God and not their own agenda? But first, don't attend a church or associate anywhere where you don't trust a pastor or anyone for that sake. You're doing yourself a disservice. You should always pray and ask God to lead you to where you should go so you could get fed spiritually. Secondly, I also urge you, if what is being taught or preached cannot be found or referenced back to the Bible, then you may need to pray and ask the Lord to lead you to a Bible-based church because they do exist. All pastors, ministers, and preachers do not have a personal agenda to mislead you or take advantage of you. I'm going to say that again. All pastors, ministers, and preachers or church leaders, they do not have a personal agenda to mislead you or take advantage of you. There are some really great messengers of the Lord out there, and they are relaying the gospel, which is firmly straight from the Bible. You may want to check out my episode on church hurt to help you on this too. Just go to any of the streaming platforms. You'll see the episode, which is titled Church Hurt. That was a pretty good one. Don't let your experience of what you might have heard about a messenger leave you wandering in the wilderness for 40 years or more like the Israelites did. Don't get so caught up and miss out with you seeing others reach their promised land while you're still wandering in the wilderness. Who wants that? So people are sitting here passing you by. You see other people's victories. They're reaching their promised land or their accomplishments. And I'm saying promised land in like a figurative term. And basically, you see everybody else, it seems like they're reaching their promised land, but guess what? You're so stuck in your own ways because of any of these other reasons or questions that I've actually asked previously. And you're still wandering in the wilderness while everybody else is experiencing a piece of that promised land. So, don't you want to experience that promised land too? So, over the next few days or the next week or so, I want you to take some time to reflect on the real reason on why you're straying away from what the Lord instructs you to do. I myself are going to do the same because I have been straying. I'm not even going to lie. And is a variety of things. And I've been able to sit down and actually kind of identify what's causing me to stray away. So again, over the next few days or the week or so, I want you to take some time just to reflect on the real reason why you're straying away and be real with yourself. Don't just sugarcoat it and be like, well, because of this or well, but no, like really be real with yourself. It's okay to be real with yourself, but just reflect on the real reason why, basically I'm getting tongue tied here, why you're straying away from what the Lord instructs you to do. Is it fear? Is it because you don't know how to? Again, just be real with yourself, as there is a way to get back on track and also to stay on track. Download the Bible app, find a plan, and learn your way through it. Basically, you could just click play and it will just actually narrate and read the scriptures to you. I use that a lot, especially when I'm working during the day or if I have some downtime and I just want to put in my AirPods or my headphones and just click play and I just let it read to me. You can read many of the other examples of how being disobedient, there are many examples in the Bible about disobedience, how they can be detrimental and also cause delays of God's promises to us all. Start off by reading the book of Exodus through the book of Joshua for starters. That's a good starting point there. There are a lot of examples of what we've been discussing in these books, along with the other books in the Bible. There's nothing new under the sun, and what you think you're going through alone, somebody else has already experienced it and gotten through it, or they may not have gotten through it. Let's look at the other side. If you need a partner to do a Bible plan with, just add me on the YouVersion Bible app. I'm under the name Teresa Michelle, and it's Teresa, Theresa, Michelle, Michelle, in two separate words. So Michelle is my middle name. I'll be happy to do a Bible plan with you. Some of you have already done this. You reached out to me and added me, and it's been such a great pleasure. It's been very nice just to read and convey our thoughts with one another and also to learn from each other, because different perspectives brings different knowledge and that we all can gain and learn and grow from each other. So let's keep it going. Friends, I just want us all to have what God has for us. I seriously do. I've been in my own way before, and sometimes I'm still am. But I know my way and what I need to do and to get back on track, and you can do the very same. Trust me, there's nothing to be scared about. God is not waiting with his arms folded to punish you. In fact, he's waiting with open arms to hear from you. Just ask him to help you and to remove anything from your life that is causing you to veer from what you know are the right things to do. I've done this several times, and each time he has answered my prayer, and he'll do the very same for you too. Listen, it's going to take some discipline, but it will be well worth it. I promise you. I really want you to remember that no matter who you are or what you've done in life, if you are a true believer and follower of Christ, you are very special to God and you are chosen. He didn't put you on this earth and create you for no apparent reason. You have a calling and you have a purpose. And since you are chosen, that means you cannot say or do everything the world does. It's going to require you to stay disciplined, and it's not the easiest thing to do, but put forth a little daily effort. It's better than doing nothing and paying for the consequences later. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of how far you've come in life, even if you don't get it right every day. Every step and every effort counts. And know that your journey is your journey. It would not be like anyone else's. So just keep that in mind. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I always say this, but I mean it. Contact me on social media or just head to my website. You could go to theezysvoice.com and you'll see all of the ways you can connect with me and contact me. My email is teresa@theezysvoice.com. That's TheResa, the @ Theezy's Voyage, TheeEzys, V as in Victor, OYAGE.com. And again, you can find all of my other contact methods on the website. Again, theezysvoice.com. Also, since we're in the age of social distancing, if you don't have a church service to live stream, I'd like to invite you to join me and live stream with my church, Uplift Christian Ministries, on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. and also at my family's church. I call these people my family. They have been my mentors. They are pastors James and Kim McLean. They are the pastors of New Vision Church. Is Nuvision, New Vision Church. Basically, again, they're basically like my family. They start live streaming every Sunday at 9 a.m. You could just go to Facebook or YouTube, type in Uplift Christian Ministries, like the page, and also you could type in New Vision Church and like the page as well. If you don't have Facebook, you could go to upliftmin.org. It's upliftmin.org, and you can stream from there. And also you can stream from the New Vision Church's website, which is nuvision.church. So newvision.church. Don't forget to also share these pages with your family, your friends, your coworkers, and also make sure you share this podcast and the podcast page and the YouTube channel for Theezy Under Grace on Instagram and also on YouTube. I would like to thank you guys so much, and I say it all the time. I'm very appreciative for you taking the time to listen and to tune in on the Theezy Under Grace podcast. I certainly hope you were blessed in some type of way with something that I mentioned in this podcast. Until the next episode, my friends, many blessings and peace to you all. Have a great day.